Hello and welcome to the Flat by 4 podcast with me, your host, Andy McGuire, and joining me this week, of course, is my co-host, Scott Eaglen, and we actually do have another special guest this week, and a bit of a living legend. He created history by scoring the first Premier League goal, played for the greatest club in the world, and of course, he is a Leeds boy through and through. Mr. Brian Deane, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you, guys. Nice
man.
to be on your show.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to just tip your camera a tiny bit up, Brian, because that's
that?
it. As much as you've got to go just now.
I know, but have we got a? Are they going to be seeing me here now?
Yeah, but you look fantastic. Don't worry. It goes onto a podcast, but we're also streaming on YouTube. We put it on YouTube later, but
okay.
Doesn't matter, mate. Whatever angle you're looking at.
I got a shave. I'm up in the clouds here, you know.
Don't you worry about it, mate. It looks like you're floating. Well, listen. How are you, mate? How's Corona life treating you in these last few weeks?
I'm okay. You know, just being sensible. Keeping myself, social distancing and all of that. Very conscious because I've got other people. There's my family and so on. So I just think people have got to be sensible in this and just realise just because the government say it's fine to ease now, I don't really think it's already been shown and proven that you can't always believe everything everybody says, so you've just got to be sensible yourselves.
No, I agree. I totally agree with that, mate. And all of a sudden this week, I think the first few weeks, I think everyone was super serious. And then, you just kind of feel this week that people are getting that little bit edgy over it, but we can't let off because we don't want a second spike, do we? We just don't want that to happen.
No, not at all. I mean, I drove down by Golden Acre Park yesterday during the day, and the car park was just ridiculously full. And I thought, come on, people, be sensible. But hey, listen, it is what it is.
I agree. We had Ian Dowie on the show a few weeks back, and he said that he's picked up gardening in Corona life. Have you got new skills while you've been off? Use your time wisely.
I think I'm going to become an alcoholic. That's the thing. I think everybody else. That's the thing, isn't it? I've become a bit of an expert in wine. I've left the room alone, but it's really hard. Look, I mean, in my garden, I kind of got used to mowing the lawn, which is good, which I never used to enjoy. But we've had some really good weather.
Oh, it's been amazing, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna complain.
No, it's I think people have gone the isolation thing of either gone really fit, or people have gotten very fat, or got an alcoholic. So it's nice to know which road you've gone down, Brian. So listen, Premier League. We've had the announcement that Premier League's coming back, and I think we all want to see a little bit of normality. Have you been watching the Bundesliga to see how it's been going on over there? Have you been keeping an eye on?
Honestly, not really. What I do is I go on YouTube and I look at the highlights, and I kind of catch up that way. It's very difficult for me to look at a game. It's just like watching a behind closed doors friendly. So really I can't. I can't really profess to be somebody who's sat there analysing the games and is that interested. I'm just not. I think. A lot's happened, and it kind of puts things into perspective. When you hear about people losing members of their family and so on, and all the other arguments that we've got at the moment. Players not going in, players going in. The way how people are going to lose jobs and all the rest of it. It makes you kind of readjust a little bit, I think, and I feel that when we come out of this. Football will have to look at itself. I think that businesses in general will have to look at themselves and perhaps follow a different model. There's a real opportunity in some respects to hit the reset switch, look at the way how they have a philosophy of running a business, think about longer term. I think it would be nice if football did think longer term, but unfortunately I feel what will happen is we'll return to how it was before. People will think about short-termism which it will be a disaster for the game. But you also have to look and think that the people who are going to come out of this quicker, the bigger clubs, because they will get the pickings of everything. The smaller clubs, we got to be sensible and have an adjustment. I think fans are going to have to slightly adjust their their expectations as well, and look at it as a long-term hobby, long-term investment in themselves as well.
Do you think the smaller clubs are getting enough help, Brian? Do you think they're getting enough help maybe from the Premier League? And I'm thinking lower down in League One and League Two.
I think it's difficult to ask the Premier League for help because the Premier League is a business. If you're asking for help, that should come from the Football Association. The Premier League is a business, and they have stakeholders. They're there to make money. They sell their product all over the world, so they will be accountable. And I know it's not what people want to hear, but we've allowed football to get into this state now where everything is about money, and so of course as soon as you leave everything to money, it's the law of the jungle, and the fittest and the strongest will survive. Those who won't will be eaten, and all the rest of it. So, those conversations will be had. But let's be honest. Do you see people sat in a room and they're running a business saying, we've got to do this for the good of the game? You've got people who will be on 2-year contracts.
Yeah.
It will all be, it'll all be performance driven. If they keep their jobs, they're going to be thinking about themselves. And that's what people forget. Whereas it's whereas it is a job, and whereas it is a hobby, people want to stay in their job, and you usually stay in your job if you're good at creating money, creating figures, and so on. So it's a difficult one, and it's, let's be honest, it's probably been coming for a while, and it's sad to see because. I'm not sure how some of the clubs will survive. Players will have to adjust their expectations of money. I think that what will have to happen as well is I think players, everybody will have to start upskilling and readjusting where they see themselves in years. That will happen, no doubt, because the kind of money, the £100 million transfer fees are not going to be there. So there's going to be an adjustment in the transfer market as well. These are all inevitables, really.
Yeah, you've just taken the words out of my mouth there. I was going to ask about transfers, and maybe if, like you said, the £100 million transfers don't go through, people might start delving into their youth system a bit more. We've seen the likes of Chelsea go to youth when the transfer embargo on, that actually kind of helped them really. I'm going to ask you though, Brian, if you were in the, say you're 26, 27, you were coming to the end of your contract, this coronavirus has hit, and then they've asked you to play an extra 2 months, but yet you're maybe you're in discussions with another club. Would you have risked going in and playing these last remaining 9 games if you were maybe a mid-table club and you were safe?
Oh, well, when I was playing, I didn't have kids.
Yeah,
but now I've got kids. So the short answer is, I have to think about family first. Yeah, everybody thinks about family first, and clubs can't have it both ways. And people, it's a balance, because on the one hand, you're saying if those players weren't good enough, they'd be releasing them. Mm-hmm. So a player has to look after himself. And I know fans might not like the fact that, they'll say, well, we've stuck by him and this and that. Listen, I've had fans boo me, when I was trying my best, wherever.
Yeah.
You have to look out for yourself. And it's unfortunate that this situation has arisen. But, you have to look at also, how could they let themselves get into a situation like that where people's contracts are running out as well?
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, Arsenal have been, at fault for that, haven't the last couple of years and whatnot. Yeah. On the Premier League, obviously, I mean, Liverpool, they were so unfortunate last year. Man City pipped them. This year, you've played against some good Liverpool teams. How good is this Liverpool team, Brian?
Yeah, it's really right up there. I mean, if you look through the team, they've got a really good balance. Sorry, but what I really like is I was always for about teams being very athletic and also having a lot of pace in the team, and they've got it coming from everywhere, and that's when you have that much pace and skill, it makes it very difficult for the opposition, and it is brilliant to watch. So, look, I mean, they're a breath of fresh air. If you look at Manchester City, they have a brilliant way of playing, but it was becoming, they lost. Their system is set up so that they have the best players. They'll have the best left-footed centre back available, and every key component means that system works at 95%. They lost the centre back, and that caused them problems. It's very hard to adapt.
And he's good, isn't he? He's a very good player, I thought, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But I mean, I remember sat watching. I did my A license with a guy from Portugal, and he was working for Manchester City. And I went to watch Manchester City 18s against Barcelona's 18s, and you could see the quality of the Barcelona players. And I said, well, what happens to some of these players? And he said, well, the problem is that because they're so used to playing in a certain system that they go everywhere else. They go somewhere else and they can't adapt. And if you look at the way our City play, they play a 4-2-3-1 or they play a 4-3-3. There are certain movements. It's almost like a mathematic algorithm. Yeah. If you look at the way how you might get Kyle Walker playing as a winger. Yeah. And that's because they've got a holding midfield player that sits in the hole and it becomes a 3. But they've got that much control over the game that they can push people on, and then teams can't get out. They focus on winning the ball back within a certain amount of time, and that means that teams can't get out of the final third.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And going back to Liverpool as well with the managers, and we talk about Pep Guardiola and the Barcelona, that system, and La Masia. Jurgen Klopp, if you were playing for Jurgen Klopp, he just seems a manager that you want to wake up an extra 2 hours early for and go to training and even work, and you feel like he wants to do the same to you. How important is it to have that person who runs the club? He seems well liked, and you just want to play for him. What difference is that as a player playing for a manager that you just think this guy's unbelievable?
It's great, and you make a really good point, because Jurgen Klopp, if I look at him, I straight away would know, what, I'd love to play for him, because if you're ever a player who's perhaps going through a difficult spell, you can imagine him pulling you to one side and just saying, listen, just relax, listen, life goes on, your form will come back, and that's, different people respond to different types of man management, but if you look at him, he's always smiling. It looks as though he makes everybody relax. But I've also seen a situation where he also had to show that he was the alpha dog. With a situation with the centre-back, Sissoko. He doesn't look as though he's somebody you want to cross. But at the same time, I think his man management is spot on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree.
Speaking of good man managers, though, and I'm probably going to touch on one of your all-ex clubs again, is Sheffield United. A, how well have they done this season? And B, how good of a manager is Chris Wilder?
Well, they've done phenomenal. If you look at the way they've stayed true to their values, I think the year before Fulham went up, spent 100 million and then came back down. And what Chris has done is he's made sure that those players who got them up have got the chance to show what they can do. You're talking about people like Chris Basham. He sticks out to me as one who I remember him playing for the Blades against Bradford City away. There's a friend of mine who's got a box at Bradford, and that was about 5 years ago, and I've seen him in the Premier League, and he's been fantastic. So that again is good man management. And the best man managers, you want to run through a brick wall for them, and because they will tell you what you need to know. And if you get a good manager, you'll feel like you're walking on air after he's spoken to you. So I think Chris comes into that, and it's the reason why Chris comes into that is because he's had ups and downs. There are managers out there who get handed positions and they don't have the opportunity to build up any resilience, and resilience in sport is very important. Resilience in sport and mental toughness. You have to have them ups and downs, because you learn more in the down periods than you do when you're winning.
It's true. I just want to jump in there, because when you talk about Chrissy Wilder and you think like League One and Championship, and then you look at players like Vardy, who obviously was non-league, and I think all that part of mentality of football, of playing in them lower leagues, and then for him to go on and not just play in the Premier League, but he won the Premier League title, Jamie Vardy. So I think that strong mentality, Chris Wilder's got that in an abundance. And I want to ask you, if it will never happen, and I feel it's such a shame, could someone like Chris Wilder, with Jurgen Klopp's money, go into Liverpool with that same man management and get as good out as maybe what Jurgen Klopp's doing? Because we just never seem to see it, where like a manager of that, maybe you do see it, but not as much as maybe we should.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because what Chris has been able to do is he picked up Sheffield United from League One, and he's structured a way of playing. He's brought in the right types of players with the right characteristics, because believe it or not, character is a massive recruitment tool. You have to have the people with the right mentality. If you're buying a player and he hasn't got the right mentality, then you have a problem. So your recruitment has to be right. And what Chris has done is, very quickly, he's had success all the way through, and those players have gone on the journey with him, and they've been successful as well. So they trust him, and he trusts them. If he went into another club, I think the problem, because we're humans, is that human nature, the way our players probably think is that sometimes they wait for the manager to get his they'll say, some of the big sides, look, now you're talking about players who are earning £100,000 a week, and there's a big difference there, in that they have egos to massage and all the rest of it. What you need really is you need time. So if Chris was to go from there, wherever he went next, he'd need time, and he'd need support. You can't just expect Chris, who's been managing at Sheffield United, to go into a team in the Champions League positions and the same thing to happen. Because there'll be players have different agendas, and it'll be the same anywhere, whether good or not. And you have to get control of that changing room very quickly. And if somebody's
sorry, mate, go on, carry on, Ron. No, carry on.
I was going to say, if somebody's on £7, £8, £9 million a year and he's not playing, then his ego is going to be bruised if the manager doesn't. Yeah. And then you have all kinds of other issues. So there is a wider management situation, and these are all things that you have to overcome, and it's pretty layered as well.
I hear a lot of people say about managers, Brian, where they're not scared of the manager, but they're actually scared to disappoint them. Would you say that that's probably what Wilder commands in his respect? That his players are really they're really scared to actually disappoint him because he's that much of a man manager.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. When somebody when you have that belief, when the manager says, "I believe in you," I only managed for 2 years, but what I did was I took a lot of the things that I wanted as a manager, in a manager, into my management. So I kind of flipped it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make this guy. This guy might not be playing, right? And I remember one time I went in and I did a speech, and I said, listen, I had the fullback from Spain, a Spanish boy, and I said, listen, Alvaro hasn't played, but of that. The squad is the team, because if you go into that room and you don't treat a player right, then the rest of the players will be going, well, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And they soon create, they have WhatsApp groups, they have all of these tools now where, they something could be written and it's, it becomes kind of like the word, and, it's very, clicks can be very dangerous. I've seen clicks destroy managers. So, but I really believe, for me, I played with Chris, I'm the same age as him. I kind of, his characteristics are what I like, and that's how I managed. Obviously not to that degree, but the same kind of mentality and the philosophy of dealing with players. It's very important to respect your players. And if you've got if you're going to drop a player, it's important you pull him and you say, listen, I'm dropping you because of this, and this. Leave the door open. When we were playing back in the day, we used to get dropped, and the managers would just blank you and ignore you. I can name some, but there's no point. But the point is, it's changed, and people have had to adjust because the stock of players now is a lot higher than it was.
Is it as well? I mean, you go on about the players on so much money. Like back in the day, you got dropped, and do you think now that you need to be a little bit more around the shoulder? Because if they're getting a huff, they're on 120 grand a week, and you've got Mino Raiola, super agents and stuff like that kicking in a fuss. Is that? I mean, obviously you saw totally different, 80s, 90s grit football. It's changed so much, hasn't it? I mean, is that one of the reasons why you're thinking that if you do drop a player now, like a Pogba, you've got to go put your arm around him and go, don't worry, it's because you instead of just going, look, you dropped because you're not playing well at the minute, whether you're on 200, 300 grand a week or not.
Yeah, I think that players aren't as resilient as they were. I think in many ways they've become soft. They have a lot more done for them. They, I'll give you an example. I had the team I was managing, we got beat 4-0 one time, and I really tore into everybody, and the general manager had me in on the Monday, and he said, well, you've actually, you can't talk to players like that, Brian. I said, hang on a minute. I said, listen, I says, I've been embarrassed out there. I'm embarrassed for the club. I'm going to tell them, if I don't think they've worked hard, I'm going to tell them, because that ain't happening again. And they got to know that I'm pretty pissed off.
I agree. And it is a mentality and that. And I'm going to switch on to a club well. And I mean, both me and Scott, we're both Leeds fans. And obviously you got the flip side of Bielsa, who, we understand that the English is not completely there, but he did get a group of players that perform very average, and he's got them to a level maybe that we probably didn't think that they'd get to. We should have gone up maybe last year. I'm just going to ask you, what do you think of this Leeds team and the Bielsa effect?
I think it's really good. I think the football's fantastic. I think it's really funny because I remember going to a restaurant in Leeds, and I used to know a lot of the waiters, because I used to go, when I was at Leeds, we used to always go to all the Italian restaurants and so on. And I remember they said that when one of the previous managers was there, they all went out and they were all getting drunk in town and they'd lost at home. And I was shaking my head and I thought, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's you can't do that. But it seemed like the players had, they'd lost. It didn't matter. And I think when you bring in a manager like Bielsa, there aren't any excuses for the players anymore.
I agree.
They can't turn around and say, well, the manager doesn't, I'm not inspired by the manager. He doesn't, I'm not learning anything from him or anything. It's on the players. And from that point of view, they have to perform because it's laid bare. his reputation is bigger than any of the players, and so
that's true.
If they don't perform, then everybody will know that. Well, it can't be coincidental.
I mean, he's got so many plaudits, hasn't he, though, Brian? Like Pep Guardiola said he was, the one that he looked up to, and that. Just when you watch Leeds as a pro and you were on the pitch and stuff, we sometimes have spoken as Leeds fans. We have an opinion, of course we do. We're all managers in his own right. We've sometimes criticised him when we've been messaging each other saying, "Why isn't he made a sub?" And sometimes he persists, and his teams are notorious for burning out. Okay, like we've seen it a few out the years. We seem to have a little blip, and then we started picking up. And then just before Corona, we were having an absolute. We were playing really well again. If we didn't go up this year, I mean, with the league starting as well, I mean, it's a failure, isn't it? But do you think in your heart of hearts that Leeds and maybe West Brom, because the way that we've played, I mean, Fulham are going to be sniffing again. But do you think Bielsa's got that now to get us over the line? And if so, would he stay for the first Premier League season with Leeds, or do you think it would be a move on time for him?
Okay, so there's been, I don't know how the periodization works down there, but they seem to go through peaks and troughs. So I would say that the players are very fit. I don't know what kind of science he applies, but they have to be fit to play his way of playing. I think that the one negative, I'd say, that yes, there is potential burnout, but I also think that because the squad's so small, it's a huge problem. If people get injured, and you've seen it down there where people have got injured and they, because the squad's so small, it's caused an issue with results. But having said that, look, I can't criticise the guy. The guy's like, he's hugely respected, hugely experienced, and he's the right man. I think he's, Leeds owes him a debt, because Leeds, for me, if anybody was to turn around and say to me, right, okay, buy a club, people have said it to me, I'd say, listen, this is the club, because everything's here logistically in the country. It's got good networks. It's got a huge fan base. And of course I live here. There's, there's great properties. It's just a wonderful place, and it needs somebody with his kind of presence to move the club forward. Will he stay next year? I don't know, because I think the squad will need overhauling. I think they'll need a bigger squad, and I think that there will have to be a little less rigid with tactics, because you get found out at the top level.
Yeah.
How do you think Bielsa would cope at that top level, Brian? Because like we were saying, he's been in the top level in Europe with Lazio. I think he was at Lille. I think he was at Bilbao as well. And he's caused a bit of controversy as well with owners and things like that. Maybe he wasn't getting the players that he needed. Because Leeds would probably need a bit of an overhaul and probably need one or two quality players. Do you think Bielsa would get that? And do you think Bielsa would have the patience with the owners? And how do you think Bielsa would do in the Premier League?
Look, I don't know. I mean, without question, he's up there. He's been a national team manager. It just depends what he wants. If he wants a bigger squad, who he wants to work with, what's the budget, if you have to overhaul a squad, that ain't cheap. You know what I mean? So, and
especially now as well, we don't know what's going to go on with transfers. No one really knows what's. I mean, obviously there will be a transfer window, so I think loans might become maybe even more important now, and trying to.
Yeah, but who are you going to loan from?
Well, no, I know, I get that. I mean, maybe you have to delve in maybe to the youth, and maybe like people like Ryan Brewster that went on board to the Championship. Maybe I know
the biggest, the best thing that clubs can do is have good recruitment. Whether it's youth recruitment or whether it's a good network. And for me, I always think that if you're going to build a squad, you have to have a strong spine. You have to have an athletic spine. You have to have centre backs who are quick, strong, centre midfield players who are technically very good, confident, and mobile. And you need pace up front. If you haven't got pace up front and aggression, you're not doing anything. It's simple, and history doesn't lie. You can't fool around with these things. You need that kind of, there's a balance all the way through. You need short, medium, long-term strategy in place as well. Your short-term strategy might be you bring in more experienced players who have been there and seen it, done it. Your medium-term players are your players who, have got a lot to prove, but they're in that situation where they've still got potential and they're moving into that top tier. And then under that, you need it's got to be like a conveyor belt. So in terms of like your longer term, you've got to look at good youth recruitment. You've got to offer youth the opportunity to come here to develop. And let's be realistic and honest. If you do really well at a club, everybody's always going to want to move on. So you've got to help plan a player pathway for these players as well, if you can't give them what they want in a club situation.
Fair play. Listen, mate, we've only got 5 minutes left. I just want to touch on you, and obviously you did create issue when you scored that first Premier League goal. Going back to that thing, did you realise what a big deal that would be really in the fact that it was this revolution and football changed for the better? I mean, I do think it, look at the model it is today, but going back to your time there and scoring that goal and the career you had, what did that moment feel like?
Or
was it just another goal really because you were doing your job?
No. I mean, look, to be honest, when I always used to think, as a forward, I used to think, right, when the season started, I've got to try and get off the mark as quickly as possible. So I was never happy unless I scored the first game of the season. And fortunately, in all my years at Sheffield United, I always scored on the first day.
Wow.
So,
okay.
And so that was me saying, right, okay, Brian, if you're 1-2, 1-3 guy, that means that, the more you score, the better you can sort of like stick to wanting to maybe get 20 goals a season or whatever. So I at that time you had a lot of good players. You had Alan Shearer, Teddy Sheringham, Ian Wright, Les Ferdinand, all of these top players. And I kind of thought, well, you know what? It's beginning of a new era. You were playing Man United, but, probably now is the best time to play them. And so, we went out there with confidence and, we practiced set pieces. We knew that, the beginning of any season, there's going to be a part when people are going to switch off. And we played for that. We knew that if we had a throw-in in the final third, what we were going to do with it. And that's what we did. And, I come off the pitch and somebody had said, I think you scored the first goal. And to be honest, I was just happy that I scored,
Yeah.
If
who was the hardest defender you ever came up against in football? Somebody you thought just going up against him?
Well, I don't know. You might have been too young, but I remember we played Monaco at home. We went to Monaco in the UEFA Cup.
Yeah.
And we beat them 3-0 there, and we ran riot. It was absolute chaos down their place. We won 3-0, and Tony Bow was on fire.
Was that a hat-trick?
That's right, yeah. And I played in a position that I really liked, which was on the left-hand side. And, the three of us up front just caused chaos. Come back down to Ellen Road in the return game, and they put a man on me, man-to-man. That was Lilian Thuram.
Oh, what a player. We are 33. We're 33, Brian, so we're not...
okay.
What a player he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, that was one game that I remember. After about 10 minutes, I thought, okay, well, this is going to be a difficult game. but I hardly got a kick. And after about 65 minutes, I just wanted the final whistle to go because it was just the fact that he was so sharp. He was beating me to, balls getting played in. He was nicking it round the side. He was strong. He was quick. He didn't mind the physical side of it. He would give it back, and I just thought, I don't know what to do. And plus, don't get me wrong, they were 3-0 down, so they were going for it, and they had likes of Sonny Anderson, Emmanuel Petit, really, really good team. Thierry Henry was on the bench in the first leg, I think.
Well, he didn't go on to do too much, did he, Brian?
Poor player, but no. So after the game, I remember I had a choice out of Petit and Thuram for their shirt. Yeah, and I took Thuram's shirt, and
fair play.
I've still got his shirt, but he's probably been washing his car with mine. But
Brian, we've only got 30 seconds left. We just wanted to say a big thank you for coming on, mate. We really appreciate that. We're a new podcast, and it's been really nice, refreshing to hear some of the stories and that. And keep being safe, and the family as well. And maybe someday soon we'll have you back on, maybe after all this is over. But thank you very much for coming on, mate.
Thank you, Brian.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
okay.
See you later, Brian.
Cheers, Guy. Bye.